how do you feel about dating? It's a pretty blunt question, and honestly, it's an awkward place to start. But honestly, can't dating be kind of awkward? At least there have been times it has been for me, especially in high school, right? When I felt like I was on a journey to find the one. I'll never forget the incorrect thought process that I lived with in my high school years surrounding the world of dating. I remember the crushes, the first date feelings, the raging hormones, and navigating all of that, and the roadmap of how a date is supposed to go. And this idea that the one is out there for me somewhere. Like, I thought that God had one person assigned to me in life that I was supposed to marry, and I had to try to find her, but I had to make sure that she was the one. So much so that if I chose the wrong girl, then I stole the girl that God had assigned to someone else to marry. And I lived as if me not getting it right and choosing the one would screw up God's entire plan for humanity. And, there'd be this trickle effect down the entire population of all sorts of people who are, going to marry the person they're not supposed to because I didn't marry the girl God had for me, and that affected everyone else. And honestly, it's so ridiculous how I thought that I was that important of a person that I could ruin God's plan for the world. That's besides the point. Here's the thing. I think that my story connects with all of us in some way. For some reason, I think most of us have this idea that the one for us is out there somewhere, and we just have to find them and everything else will fall into place. But in reality, like, if you desire to be married one day, there is the one out there for you, but not in the way that you might think. You see, God gave you a mouth. He gave you a personality, a face. These are tools that we can use to, in a God-honoring way, walk across the room to that guy or girl and say, hi, and to find out if you're compatible. The one is the one that you choose, all the while you're seeking the Lord and honoring Him through the entire process. So it's no secret that we're talking about dating over the next couple weeks. Maybe you don't even use the word date or dating. Maybe that idea seems, dated or old, because there are actually a million ways to categorize a relationship. Maybe you're hanging out. Maybe you're just talking. Maybe you just have a solid streak going with somebody. Maybe that person moved 2 provinces away and you FaceTime every day. To simplify things for our purposes, we're going to use the term dating, and we're going to define it this way. Being in a relationship, whatever that looks like, where the other person means more to you than just being a good friend. But maybe for you, it's more complicated than that. Like, do you fall into any of the many high school dating life categories? Maybe you're not looking for the one, you're just looking for someone. Anyone. Maybe you can't seem to meet someone you're interested in, and you're open to the idea, but no one meets your standards. Maybe the person you're interested in isn't interested in you. Maybe your version of the one is different than what your parents think is okay for you, or maybe your idea of the one is different from what society would think of as the one. Maybe you're dating for the one and they're just dating for fun. Maybe you have a growing list of requirements in order for them to be the one. Maybe you think life doesn't really start until you found the one, and so you're waiting forever. Maybe you haven't been on a date, aren't thinking about dating, nor even want to date, but it seems like everyone thinks that you should date. On top of all this, you might be thinking, okay, awesome. I get to hear about dating from someone at church who's probably going to give me some old school advice about how I shouldn't date. Or they're just going to tell me, I need to pray and read my Bible and be single forever. I'm not going to do that. And if you're thinking that, wondering where I'm going with all of this, don't worry. This series isn't going to be about convincing you not to date. And in fact, as a pastor, I've resolved in my own ministry to not speak into when I think you should or shouldn't date, simply because I am not your parent or guardian. I believe, specifically for high school students, that's a call for your parents to make, and you should respect them. Instead, I like to focus my time on equipping you to honor God in this area when you do date as your parents allow it. This series also isn't about making you feel guilty for having a significant other or for wanting to have one. In fact, the next few weeks aren't going to be about encouraging you to not date at all. It's about helping you date well in a way that honors God when the time comes. And look, no matter how you feel about dating right now, Whether you're not interested, you've never dated, or you are obsessed with having a significant other, chances are dating might be a part of your life in the future. And so I'm sure you'd like to figure out what it would take to find the one, or better yet, what it would take to be the one for someone else. Well, the good news is you don't have to try to figure this out on your own. When it comes to our relationships with one another, the Bible has some really helpful things to say, even if it never mentions dating specifically. And that makes sense because it was written thousands of years ago. Dating wasn't really a thing back then. But stick with me for a few minutes because what we are going to look at is still helpful for us today. The section that we're looking at today, it's the book of Proverbs, and it's dedicated to wisdom, which simply means that it's a book about learning to make better choices in all areas of our lives. Most of Proverbs was written by a man named Solomon, who was one of the more famous kings of Israel. A little about Solomon. Early in his life, God gave him an incredible amount of wisdom to rule God's people. But even though he had this wisdom and knew better, it didn't mean he always did better. And there were some things he learned the hard way, through making mistakes and poor choices. But see, whether Solomon learned from getting it right or getting it wrong, you could say that Proverbs is the ultimate guide to making wise choices. And when it comes to dating, gaining and applying wisdom is the best way to figure out how to think about relationships. And so let's look at some wisdom from Solomon. Proverbs chapter 24, verse 27 says this. It says, "Put your outdoor work in order and get your fields ready. After that, build your house." And so here, Solomon is talking about the best way to build a house. And just hang with me because I promise it connects to dating. Like a lot of things in the Bible, even though this verse was directed at a specific audience about a specific thing, it contains universal wisdom that makes it relevant for us as well, even thousands of years later. You see, remember when we said Solomon had really helpful wisdom but didn't necessarily follow it himself? Well, this guy had hundreds of wives and side relationships as well. And so, to be completely honest, his dating life was a total mess. But that doesn't change the fact that what he was getting at here is really helpful when it comes to our own dating lives, or our lives in general. His ideal to-do list went as follows. He says, number 1, get your land ready for a house. And number 2, then build your house. I don't know how much you know about building a house, but this seems like pretty solid advice. Like a big part of getting the land ready for construction is leveling the ground out so you can lay a concrete foundation. And the most critical part of building is having a foundation in place before you actually build. In other words, you need to take the right steps in the right order, and this applies when it comes to dating. Life works the same way. Prepare now, and you'll succeed later. And so basically, if you want to be successful at something, you have to prepare its foundation first. But here's the thing, even though we know this is true, how often do we try to be successful without first having a foundation? And so we know that we have a big test coming up, but we don't actually study until 10 minutes before the test. Or we know that we need a certain GPA in order to get into our preferred school, but we don't start taking our grades seriously until the middle of grade 11. We know that tryouts are soon, but we've been watching that Netflix series way more than practicing. We know that we're probably not in a position to date, we're not ready, but we go for it anyway. You see, if we want a good result, and I don't think anyone wants dating to turn out bad, taking the right steps in the right order matters. And look, this isn't about shaming people. We've all done it. It's human nature to look for the easy route. But life doesn't work that way. Dating is no different. In fact, let's apply Solomon's Guide to Home Building to your dating life. Think about the steps like this. Number 1, get yourself ready to date. Number 2, then date. And how do you get yourself ready to date? Well, instead of waiting to find the one, work on becoming the one. Because becoming the one is better than finding the one. want to take a wise approach to dating and, you want your relationships to have the best chance at succeeding, start by building a good foundation. And that means you need to start with you and Jesus. The problem is this doesn't always come naturally to us. You see, it's a lot easier to set a high standard for the person we want to date than to meet that high standard ourselves. How would we even begin to do that? What I want to do is actually look at a passage of scripture that talks about love. It's from a letter, the Apostle Paul, a guy who started many of the first Christian churches. He wrote this to the church in an ancient city called Corinth. It's from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, and it goes like this, verses 4-7. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable, and it keeps no record of being wronged. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. It's a great list, right? And the way Paul talks about love makes it sound pretty incredible. Like, I bet most of us heard that list and thought, wow, I sure would love to find someone like that. But if we need to lay a foundation and focus on ourselves before we move on to someone else, we need to ask ourselves, what does this passage mean for me? It means that before we start looking for these incredible qualities in someone else, we focus on becoming that kind of person right now, whether we are dating or not. Because the truth is that learning to demonstrate these sorts of qualities pays off no matter your relationship status. And the good news is that we look to Jesus as our example. Jesus is every single thing described in that passage in 1 Corinthians. And so the goal is really to become more and more like him. But you never just arrive at becoming the one. You don't check off these qualities Paul mentions like you can master one and move on to the next. You keep working on it. You keep working on you now and later. In fact, even people who choose to get married have to keep working on it. Learning to be patient, kind, and not proud just makes everything better. From your friendships to your family life to your dating life. And when you work on these qualities in your life now, it pays off now and later. Think about it this way. When it comes to dating, often what we do is we, take out our marker or pen or whatever. We begin to create a list of things to look for in the other person, right? And so we might say we want someone who's funny, attractive, loves Chick-fil-A as much as I do, patient, smart. And then what we do is we take our binoculars and we set out to find that person, right? We go looking for the one and we start to say, okay, yep, attractive, check. That person's cute, but probably doesn't get my love for Harry Potter. Smart, okay, check. Awesome. Yep, would probably look good next to me in prom pics. Check. Right? We take the binoculars and we go searching. But what about you? You see, the truth is that no other human can fulfill your every need. And the other truth is we aren't perfect. Every person has areas of their life that will always need work. And so what I want you to do is I want you to trade your binoculars for a mirror. What do you, who do you want to be, whether you're dating someone or not? And are you becoming that kind of person? And so, are you loving, right? We're going to write that on here. Are you kind? Are you patient? Bam. I don't know if you can see this, but it doesn't matter. You get the idea. And we begin to look in the mirror and we work on becoming that person first. You see, I think that we tend to believe that when we meet someone, we're really interested and we'll just naturally treat that person well. But the truth is, when it comes to loving someone well and treating someone well, we need practice. We don't just become the one or become patient or kind by accident. And so if you want, a deeper faith, a higher quality of life, really, whether you're dating someone or not, it's important to focus on becoming these things now. And the best part about all of this is that you become so much more than just the one someone is looking to date. You become the one who is known for loving everyone well. That's what it means to follow Jesus. You become more like him, who was known by his love for others. right? He doesn't just change your dating life. Jesus winds up changing everything: your friendships, your family relationships, and your dating relationships. And now I get it. Some of you have been dating for a really long time, but maybe haven't ever thought about it this way before. And I want you to know that it's never too late to work on becoming the kind of person Paul is talking about. After all, this is a lifelong process, and it doesn't end when we start dating or even get married. However, if you're not dating someone right now, you're in the perfect position to focus more on becoming the one until you do start dating. But perhaps the best news of all is becoming the one isn't really about dating at all. It's about you for the sake of you. And so here, and again, just real quick, when I say for the sake of you, what I mean, again, it's you becoming more and more like Jesus, obviously. But here are 3 steps to get started. Number 1, choose who you want to work on becoming. Look at that list of characteristics that Paul describes, when he talks about love. And again, all of those things, Jesus, meets those requirements there. And so pick one, which of those would you like to focus on becoming first? And start there. Which characteristic right now would benefit your life and your relationships the most? Maybe you want to be less jealous or more kind. Whatever it might be for you, choose one that you want to work on becoming, and then practice. And you may already be doing this, but if not, give it a shot. Try being excited for others when good things happen for them, or try going out of your way to make someone else's day better. Start being quick to forgive so that you don't keep a record of wrongs. And don't expect to do this perfectly right out of the gate, but do give it a shot. And keep practicing even when you mess up. Over time, you're going to wind up becoming more and more like the one that Paul is talking about, someone who loves like Jesus. And then repeat. Keep coming back to this process over and over. If you repeat these steps at different points in your life, you'll constantly be growing and becoming more like Paul's definition of love throughout the different phases of your life and your relationships. And over time, you'll continue moving in the direction of becoming the one, someone who is known by your love in all areas and not just dating. Okay, so one more time, think back to Paul's list. Love is patient, it's kind, it's not jealous, it doesn't demand its way. Wouldn't it be amazing to meet someone who had those qualities? Now think about this. What kind of qualities would that person be looking for? Who do they want to date? And how would they describe what they're looking for in their one? Patient people, kind people, people who put others first are often attracted to people with those same qualities. That's the kind of person someone else would want to date. It's not a bad bonus. And at the same time, even if you're not interested in dating, which, please hear me, is way more than okay, you'll still wind up having better relationships with everyone in your life because you are more loving and growing as a person. You're growing to be like Jesus. Practicing patience and kindness alone could have a huge impact on your relationships, both today and in the future. And so instead of just focusing on finding someone or deciding if they're right for you, work on your foundation, because becoming the one is better than finding the one.